Hey there, this is Deadpool Negative. I'm sorry it's been a while since I last posted a video. I've just been busy with work stuff, and I was kind of nervous about this one because this is one I really want to really want to count. So I recently got the Blu-ray of this movie, a movie that is turned 35 years old this year, and actually means quite a lot to me. It is called The Beast, directed by Kevin Reynolds and written by veteran playwright William Mastrosimone, based on his own 1984 play Nanawatai. It, I'll give you a quick. I first saw this film at literally one of the lowest points of my life, August 2000. It doesn't matter why, but I was just so incredibly unhappy with my life at that time, and it didn't get better till much later. But I remember just catching this late night. What happened was I think I caught it like midnight on A&E. I was too tired to watch the rest of it, but at that time A&E would run their midnight movie at 4 a.m. So I set the VCR. And it was funny. There was another movie from 1988 that was also an adaptation called The Chocolate War, which also means a lot to me. But I'll talk about that some other time when I get around to it. Now, not excuse me. I was about to say Nanawatai. The Beast takes place. I had never heard of it, and there's a reason for that. It was pretty much buried upon release. It was buried upon release because I think Columbia Pictures didn't want it to compete with Rambo 3. That's what I can find. There's not a lot about this film. In fact, the DVD itself just comes with the trailer. Um, but I just remember like I'd never heard of it. I was almost from the but anyway, it takes place in 1981 in Afghanistan during the Soviet invasion. Yeah, it was August 2000. Afghanistan, I didn't know a lot about, and a year later, I would know a lot about. I and a lot of other people would know a lot about Afghanistan, even if we didn't want to. So it takes place. The very first, it has this really wonderful haunting score by Mark Isham, and it was shot in the Israeli desert. And the movie just starts with this really long, laconic credit sequence that's just shots of this small Afghan village and the empty vastness of the desert. Um, but it just looks beautiful. And again, this Mark Isham score. I mean, if you've seen movies or TV shows, you've heard at least one Mark Isham score in your life because he's been around for so decades. And I think this might be his best work. So the opening sequence of the film is completely without dialogue. You see several tanks roll into a town and just start blowing shit up, like attacking, gassing civilians. You only know it's the Soviets. You only know it's like you don't know why they're doing what they're doing or why. They're just tearing people up. And then what happens is one of the Afghan villagers is able to basically get a Molotov cocktail and a bomb and frag that. He's able to frag one of the tanks, killing everyone inside, and that rouses the tank commander of the titular beast of the film. I believe it's a Soviet T-55 tank unit. Yeah, the two Soviet T-55 tank units, and we're introduced to the top billed star of the film, who is a guy who probably never got a top bill again, but he absolutely deserved one. Was George Zunza? That's right, Greavy from Law and Order, uh, and many other things. But I think even though he's probably still best known for his one season stint on Law and Order, he and the other two, there are three subordinates. Constantine, played by Jason Patrick. Golikov, played by Stephen Baldwin. Don Harvey as Kaminsky. And Constantine is going to be the quote unquote good one because he's played by the most handsome actor. Anyway, basically what Daskal does, he finds the guy who fragged the other T-55 tank and shoves him under the tank treads and has Constantine drive the tank over him. It is horrifically gory, even for 1988. And after that, Daskal, Golikov, Kaminsky, and Constantine find. Excuse me, and There is another character. He is their Afghan interpreter. Excuse me, Samad, played by veteran actor Eric Avari, who's probably still best known to me anyway from playing Mohinder's father on Heroes, and he's quite good here in a smaller role. They obviously the Soviets are looking for Afghan insurgents trying to stop the occupation. Then Daskal and the T-55 they head back to in the direction of Soviet occupied territory. But without the other tanks, their guy, they don't have their maps blown out. They get lost. They basically get lost. And here's one of the more interesting things the film does. All the Russians speak like Americans. They all speak Americans, and the Afghan rebels, who is led by Stephen Bauer, who's Cuban, and played by some familiar actors, and I believe a bunch of so it was shot in Israel, a bunch of Israeli actors. They all speak in what I believe is Pashto, the Afghan language. I should have looked that up. And the rebels recover the rocket launcher from the other tank, and they say, hey, we can use this, we can blow it up. And so what follows is a really protracted cat and mouse game as the rebel leader, because the rebel leader was crushed under a tank, played by Bauer, is Taj, and it's one of Bauer's better performances because a lot of it is just facial expressions, and he's really racked with self doubt because he's basically their leader by default, and he doesn't know if he's up to that task. So, like I said, it's more of like, and what happens is, Constantine grows more and more disillusioned with Daskal, and eventually Daskal's paranoia gets the better of him, and he just ruthlessly murders one of the others. He ruthlessly murders Samad, the Afghan, because in Daskal's words, I know how to spot a traitor. What I think this film does a very good job of is showing how a war against an insurgent force, something like Afghanistan, where it's not clearly defined who the enemy is, can affect someone psychologically. And in the case of Daskal, who's a character we learn most about in the film, he is a man who was once himself an insurgent. There's one of the best scenes in the film, and to be blunt, the best acting Dunza's ever given. This whole film, Dunza's entire performance is amazing. And just as a side, the Broadway, the original theatrical staging in Los Angeles, Daskal was played by, interestingly, and I would have liked to have seen that, Philip Baker Hall. And he gives a monologue about how he was being lower. He was a child soldier in World War II. He was throwing Molotovs onto Soviet tanks. And there's nothing about his state of mind connects those two things, that he is now the, I mean, even at the end of the film where another character explicitly states it to him, he is the occupying force now. But as he said to him, it's like, I gave. My father gave. My mother gave. My brother gave. He gave. He gave to the Soviet cause. He gave to defend his homeland. And when his homeland told him to take over something else, how could he possibly believe that's wrong? I mean, it's a very, like I said, it's a very good, like, and Kaminsky and Gulikov, played by, Baldwin, not one of his best. Like, Baldwin doesn't get much to do except look scared, and Don Harvey does what he's usually what people hire him for. Even though I think he's a more nuanced actor than that. Playing the jerk, and they're almost interchangeable, but they do a good job. Like they're almost comical, but they also do a good job of showing how these two weak guys can follow a man like Daskal, not because they like him, not because they believe in his cause, but they're lost. They're just as lost in the middle of the Afghan desert as he is, and he seems to not be fazed by anything. He seems to know what he's doing. As for Constantine, I think he's played decently by Patrick. Not one of my favorite performances of his, but Constantine, after Daskal murders Samad, you know, his disagreements with Daskal escalate that they basically abandon him to die in the desert, and he winds up, crossing paths with Khan and his like little guerrilla force. And again, and they don't understand each other. It's kind of fascinating to see Russians who are played by Americans talking American to Afghans. And then it gets. There's just a wonderful. It's just I'm trying to articulate the vastness of the Afghan desert, in this film. So much of it seems empty and bleak, and it's almost like momentarily you're thinking to yourself, why are these guys fighting for simply nothing? And it's like, well, it's theirs. I mean, the Russians wanted to stabilize their influence, and it cost them a lot. And the Afghans just wanted to be left alone, and no one ever does leave the Afghanistan alone. And there's a great sense of like trying to. There's an arc for particularly Constantine, who becomes disillusioned, and he finds new purpose in his willingness to hunt down Daskal. There's a point near the end of the climax of the film where basically Constantine, Taj, and the rest of the Afghan rebels, or Afghan guerrillas, I should say, have them cornered, and he starts mocking Daskal, mocking him like basically. I mean, because in many ways Daskal is a bully, but Constantine's getting off on bullying him himself. And I forgot to mention earlier in the film, the reason why Constantine winds up with the rebels is because Samad taught him a word, which is the title of the original play, called Nanawatai, which means sanctuary in a way. And when he begs when they find him and he begs Nanawatai, they have to, as part of their culture, offer him sanctuary, and he offers to help them. Like there's these great bits where they don't really know how the rocket launcher works correctly, and he teaches them, and he connects with Taj. They become, I wouldn't say they become allies and possibly friends. And it builds to a climax that it's actually different from. I've read the original play. It's I've read the original play, and the movie and the play are pretty much like I think believe the women in the play, the women in the film. There's a one woman played by I believe she was an Israeli actress named Shoshi Marciano. I mean, they're all kind of. What's funny is like the movie is clearly on the side of the Afghans, but it doesn't depict Afghan society as perfect or like something that was sullied by the Soviet occupation. It is its own world with its own problems, and it builds to this conclusion that I found alternately appropriate and heartbreaking. The play ends with kind of a shocking moment and then it cuts to black. Basically, I should say. The movie ends with that same shocking moment and then goes on a little further. Basically, what you can read on the surface is a happy ending for one of the characters. And it's not a happy ending. Because you realize at the end of the film, while Constantine isn't as paranoid or bitter as Daskal, by the end of the film, he is just as broken as Daskal. His idealism has been beaten out of him because, again, I can't really spoil the film because I want you to see it. That's another thing. I want you to see this film. It really, I mean, it really, it really affected me back in 23 years ago, and I've seen him one or two times since. I watched it a ton of times back in 2000, but I kind of let it go because again, that wasn't a great time for me. Saw it a couple times since then. When I picked up this Kino Lorber Blu-ray, I sat down and watched it the first time. And I can't remember, and it's just as phenomenal as it was 35 years 20 when I saw it 35 years ago, 25 years, whatever. There's not much you can find about this film. I mean, it was directed by Kevin Reynolds. Um, yep, the guy who directed Waterworld. Kevin Reynolds, a director who I have in common with Quentin Tarantino. I think he's a very like. This is a beautiful film. I mean, it's so well directed. I mean, one of the few things I can find about this film is an interview with Mastrosimone, where he talks about the story of how Nanawatai was written. Which, yeah, I don't. It's a kind of an interesting story, which I kind of don't believe. Like, because he claims to have actually gone to Afghanistan to research it and witnessed the. Mm, you can Google it. Um, but he credited Reynolds with making it look so like I think Reynolds like he's made not great films and he's made Waterworld, which I actually enjoy. He made 187, but The Beast was his masterpiece. I mean, the movie was buried. When I say the movie was buried, it was two cities. It grossed $161,000 on an $8 million budget. And I got to tell you, like, I can imagine an alternate world where this came out and Reynolds, when this got a wider release, and while it wouldn't have broken the bank, I think it would have wound up on several top 10 lists and likely put Reynolds on a career path that. And the thing is, I mean, the man, I mean, he's directed. Let's see, he directed Waterworld, yes, but he also directed Fandango, which is his debut, and Robin and the Potential Thieves wasn't great, but it was well made. I can't really remember Rapa Nui too well. I thought 187 was 187, another movie which 187, which I mean, it's like it's so difficult to recommend that movie because the guy who wrote it came up with this ending that is so bizarre. Like it's probably one of the best movies I've ever seen about two personalities escalating, and then it comes up with a bizarre ending. Um, and his 2002 adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce, which is tremendously entertaining and fun. And also one of the first film was there's a guy in the movie who plays Albert Mondego, who is a kid named what's the name? Oh yeah, Henry Cavill. And he directed a couple more things, which I haven't seen. I haven't seen his Tristan and Isolde adaptation or that. He also directed what I consider to be the best episode of Amazing Stories, which is You Gotta Believe Me, which is about which stars the late Charles Durning as a man who wakes up, keeps having a dream about a plane crash. He doesn't know what to do. He knows this is happening, but he can't figure out. Like, and he's just an old man in a bathrobe. Who's going to believe him? And so it makes it such a fascinating. It's like, but he keeps having this nightmare. Someone is trying. A force is trying to tell him he's got to prevent this from happening. And I think it's just, Amazing Stories had a lot of duds, but there are like, a bunch of bangers. Maybe you can count the bangers on Amazing Stories on one hand, but You Gotta Believe Me, one of the bangers. So, and it's a kind of a shame because I think he's actually phenomenally talented. I'll say that. Just, and I think Zunda's career probably would have gone differently. Like one of the times when I was watching this version, I was kind of disappointed with Patrick. It was fine. He was good. He was good, but like I don't know. Like, just my opinion of Patrick in general is kind of downgraded. I thought he was a really. There's a lot of the guy, like, it's frustrating because I think he's definitely talented, but there's a lot of him that comes off mannered and like it's like in The Losers where like he was playing a character that was written as over top in the original material, and he just kind of like, and he just was, and it's weird because he was almost trying too hard. But there's a lot about The Losers that movie that doesn't really work at all, and that may not have been to him, but that's the go-to performance. But it's good. No, I mean unfair. It's a good. I think it's a terrific Bauer performance. Like again, like I think Don Harvey's a much better actor than people give him credit for, and I kind of wonder maybe it would have been interesting to see him play the role of the disillusioned, because like, but again, I kind of felt bad for Baldwin, both him and Baldwin, because they don't, like I said, they're almost functionally the same character, except for the fact that like one's both bigger jerk than the other. But again, you got to see the film for the performance of Dunza, George Dunza. Like, I, but the important thing is, okay, I want you to see this film. I want you to give this film a chance. That's why I'm making this video. And it's available to stream right here on YouTube. And I want you to give this film a chance because I want people to see it. I want people to, like, I mean, there are people who have rediscovered it. The Critical Drinker, of all people, did a 6-minute video on about a year ago, which, like, it's nice that once in a while he remembers what good things are and not whatever weird checkbox he has in his head. I mean, it's like, he enjoyed it because it was ambiguous, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. But it's also, I think it's a beautiful film. It's a beautiful film to look at. It's a well directed. It captures a really depressed, lost state of mind that I felt back then. How everyone in the film kind of doesn't want to be doing what they're doing, but they have to. Whether it be honor, revenge, or some version of duty. As Daskal says, I gave. How could he not give back? How could he not? Like, he gave. I mean, it's about a broken man who who can never realize he's broken. I mean, that's what, like, again, when Daskal is confronted, when someone spells out what he's done and what kind of person he's become, he doesn't react. And it's fascinating. It's like, so, like, and it's not, I mean, and sometimes it works as an anti-war film even though it is on the side of the Afghans, because at the end of the film, a character makes a choice to walk away from everything, because the conflict never ends. And there are those who are at peace with that, and there are those who aren't. So, once again, this is free to stream on YouTube. It's called The Beast, directed by Kevin Reynolds, written by William Mastrosimone, 1988. If you have enjoyed any of my videos, I'm asking you, please give this movie a shot. Also subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye.